Given the fact that the sovereign fund is now going to replace, as I mentioned, the fund for future generations, that was created in 1998. What is the fundamental difference between the new sovereign fund that is being put in place relative to the old fund, the fund of future generations?
Well, I mean, basically, the old fund did not really perform well. I mean, there's really a lack of public disclosure about its performance. Now, in 2010, the government tried actually to launch a new sovereign wealth fund, which has a similar framework to the current one. So basically the 2012 Sovereign Wealth Fund is basically an attempt to revive the 2010 project. Now what's really happening here is that the fund will be funded via 10% of government revenue annually, plus 50% of any revenue in excess of the benchmark assumptions in the budget, as well as the state's portfolio dividends. Once the fund reaches a capitalization of $1 billion US, from that point, then the fund will be funded from any revenue in excess of the benchmark assumptions in the budget, and 25% of the sovereign wealth fund's investments. And 75% of the fund's income will be transferred to the treasury annually, and will be part of the budget as a resource.
Okay, so the minimum targeted capitalization, we're looking at around $1 billion. Would you say that this level is achievable, given the fact that, as you mentioned, it's going to be funded from various sources and predominantly from revenues out of the oil sector?
I think it is, but it's not obviously going to happen very quickly. I mean, just to give you an idea, Gabon's foreign reserves are right now $2.3 billion. So it's going to be a medium-term goal. But I think what's important here is that the government is keen to some extent, smooth future oil price shocks and also declining output. As you know, oil output in Gabon has actually peaked a long time ago. Production used to be 300,000 barrels per day 10 years ago, and it's now 220, 240,000 barrels per day. So clearly they understand that they have to diversify the economy and quickly, and I think the Sovereign Wealth Fund is really part of that strategy.
Okay, so lack of accountability and disclosure, that was the issue that we saw in the Fund for Future Generations. Is it going to be different this time around? And we know that the fund actually serves as an open reserve account for the Bank of Central African States as well. So it has quite a large role to play, but this needs to be achieved through, as I mentioned, accountability, which we saw lacking in the previous fund.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really the main concern, because there's really a lack of public disclosure, not only about the previous fund, but also, for example, the sinking fund set up in 2007 to service the 2017 Eurobond. So I think everybody will be looking at that. But again, you know, I don't think that Gabon is really a unique case. I mean, if you look at sovereign wealth funds across sub-Saharan Africa, transparency has always been an issue, and not only in sub-Saharan Africa, actually, even in other countries in the world.
Well, I mean, what is this? I mean, you mentioned Nigeria. We've seen the sovereign wealth funds not exactly receiving the best airtime, given the fact that there is a lot of problems that we need to deal with. What is the next step if we don't embark on having sovereign wealth funds, especially for those oil-producing countries?
Well, I think the next step is to have, you know, the right level of technical expertise and competency in charge of the fund. That's going to be a big test. But again, you know, it depends on what kind of investments the fund will be targeting. I mean, for now, in recent years, we've seen the Gabonese authorities increasing their stakes in mining companies or companies involved in the forestry sector in Central Africa. So if you replicate that trend with the Sovereign Wealth Fund, it's likely that the core focus of the new fund will be sectors that are in line with the government's strategy to diversify the economy. Yeah. As you know, the government wants to move away from oil and boost sectors like wood processing or forestry, mining, etc. So I think we're probably going to see a lot of investment in that space.
Fantastic. So I mean, just also let's touch on implications for the Eurobond as well. How's this going to change things in Gabon?
Well, to some extent, I don't think that the Sovereign Wealth Fund will have an impact on the Eurobond. It is positive news, but you know, the Eurobond is already trading at record high levels. In recent days, the price reached 117.5, so it's a yield of 4.7%. And the spread over US Treasuries is now at about 388 basis points or so. So if you compare it to the EMBI plus spread, which is close to 340 basis points, frankly, there's very little room for the price appreciation. So it's unlikely that, frankly, there's going to be any further rally at this point.